There is a curious paradox at the heart of being human. You spend so much of your life trying to be complete, trying to be whole, as if wholeness were something you could chase down like a bus you've just missed. You imagine that if only you could fix every broken piece, heal every wound, understand every mystery, you would finally arrive at some perfect state of completion, a kind of psychological heaven where nothing is missing, nothing aches, and nothing threatens to fall apart. But what if the very striving to be whole is the reason you never are? What if the pursuit itself, the grasping, the reaching, the patching together of identity is precisely what keeps you divided? You see, when you chase wholeness, you divide yourself in two. There is the seeker, the one trying to be whole, and there is the sought, the image of wholeness you imagine you ought to become. And as long as those two exist, you are split. You're playing a game of hide and seek with yourself, where the seeker and the sought can never meet, because they are two sides of the same illusion. Think of a cat chasing its own tail. It spins, faster and faster, certain that just one more turn will do it. But the faster it runs, the further away it feels from the tail that was never apart from it to begin with. You, too, whirl around in circles, chasing your better self, your true self, your whole self, and all the while, wholeness sits quietly in the very thing you're trying to escape, your incompleteness, because the truth is, you're already whole, precisely as you are, with all the cracks, all the contradictions, all the confusion. Wholeness is not the absence of the broken, it is the embrace of it. It is not perfection, but participation in the dance of life, with all its steps and stumbles. When you look at the moon in the night sky, do you only love it when it is full, or is there not a quiet beauty, even in its crescents and slivers, the gentle arc that reminds you of the cycle, the ebb and flow of light and shadow? You never accuse the moon of being incomplete when it wanes. You understand, instinctively, that it is whole in every phase, because its wholeness includes its change, and so it is with you. But the mind does not like this. The mind wants a fixed wholeness, a solid thing it can point to and say, "There, I've made it. I am complete." Yet life never stands still long enough for that declaration to hold. You are a process, not a product. You are not a statue to be polished, but a river to be flowed. Every time you try to freeze life into an ideal, a perfect version of yourself, you interrupt the very movement that makes you alive. You turn what is fluid into what is rigid. You stop dancing and start posing, and then you wonder why it hurts so much to hold the pose. The irony is, when you stop posing, when you stop trying to hold the world still long enough to perfect it, something extraordinary happens. The sense of separation dissolves. You begin to feel the rhythm of life itself, not as something you control, but as something you are. You see, the moment you stop demanding to be whole, you discover that you always were. The moment you let go of the image of what you should be, you fall back into what you have always been, not a self striving for completion, but a field of experience in which all opposites already belong. The broken and the healed, the lost and the found, the pain and the joy. These are not enemies in need of reconciliation. They are partners in the same cosmic dance. The moment you say, I must fix myself, you cast a shadow, and that shadow becomes your lifelong companion. But when you see that you are never broken in the first place, the shadow merges with the light, and together they make a whole. To be whole is to no longer resist your fragmentation. To be whole is to allow the chaos of life to flow through you without trying to domesticate it into tidy little boxes of meaning. Look at the ocean. On the surface, it is waves, crashing, colliding, forever changing. And yet, beneath, it is one continuous body. The wave that rises does not compete with the one that falls, for they are the same water taking different shapes. Your thoughts, your moods, your identities, they, too, are waves on the same sea. The trouble begins when you think the crest must last forever, when you fear the fall, when you forget that the wave is never separate from the ocean. Wholeness is the remembering of that unity not through effort, but through surrender. So, you see, there is nothing to achieve. The wholeness you seek is not at the end of a long road of self-improvement. It is not a prize awarded to the spiritually disciplined or the psychologically healed. It is the recognition, sudden and simple, that even your search for wholeness was part of the whole all along. When you drop the need to be whole, what remains is life, raw, unedited, alive in every breath. The laughter and the sorrow, the peace and the confusion, all singing in harmony when you stop insisting that they shouldn't. That is the secret. Not to become whole, but to see that you already are. Not to fix the cracks, but to realize that light shines through them. Not to conquer the chaos, but to dance with it. The flower does not struggle to open. It unfolds because that is its nature. The sun does not fight the darkness. It simply rises, and in doing so, reveals that the darkness was never an enemy. And you do not have to strive to be whole. You only have to stop pretending you are not. Now, consider this. When a child plays, they never worry whether they're playing correctly. They do not measure their laughter against an ideal. They do not ask, am I whole while I do this? They are simply the play itself. The mud on their hands, the scraped knee, the sun in their hair, all of it belongs. They are not trying to be anything, they are being. And then, somewhere along the line, we are taught to step outside ourselves, to look at life as if from the outside, to ask, how am I doing? Am I enough? Am I what I should be? The moment you begin to watch yourself with judgment, the game changes. You become the actor who forgets he's acting. You start to live for the applause rather than the play. The tragedy is that the more you try to perfect the performance, the less alive you feel. You become afraid of improvisation, afraid of mistakes. But life, my dear friend, is nothing but improvisation. It's jazz, not a marching band. Every note you play is both an error and a revelation, depending on how you listen. When you drop the need to be whole, you can finally hear the music again. You realize that what you once called imperfection is simply syncopation, the offbeat rhythm that gives life its pulse. The universe itself breathes in contradictions, expansion and contraction, order and chaos, life and death. Without the tension between opposites, nothing moves. The violin string that makes no sound is one that has not been stretched. The pain of your fragmentation is not a mistake. It is the tuning of the instrument. But what happens when you resist it? When you say, I must not feel broken, you tighten too much, and the string snaps. When you say, I must be strong at all times, you forget that strength without softness is brittleness. You cannot play a song on an unbending string. To be alive is to allow the music to play through you, sometimes discordant, sometimes harmonious, always shifting. To drop the need to be whole is to stop fighting the melody and start listening to the silence between the notes. There is a curious peace that arrives when you stop trying to fix yourself. It's not the peace of perfection, but of participation. You stop standing outside of life, trying to edit it into something more acceptable, and instead, you fall back into its current. You stop swimming upstream toward an imagined paradise and let the river carry you, discovering, to your surprise, that it was taking you home all along. You see, wholeness isn't something you find by searching. It's what remains when searching stops. It's like trying to see your own eyes without a mirror. You cannot look at wholeness because you are it. The very one who seeks wholeness is the wholeness seeking itself. A wave looking for the ocean, unaware it has never left. And so, I ask you, who is the one trying to be whole? Is it not a thought, a story in the mind that says, I am incomplete? But that story, too, belongs to the whole. Even your longing for wholeness is part of the dance. It is the inhale before the exhale of surrender. You are not required to delete the longing. You are only invited to see it, to hold it gently, like a cloud passing across the sky of awareness. For when you stop clinging to it, even longing becomes luminous. Even the ache is sacred. I once watched a man repair an old Japanese bowl. It was cracked nearly in two, but instead of hiding the damage, he filled the fracture with gold. Kintsugi, he said, golden joinery. The cracks were no longer flaws to disguise. They were part of the story, illuminated by light. That is the art of living. You do not erase your wounds. You gild them. You let them shine. The need to be whole comes from a fear of being seen, truly seen. You think, if they see my cracks, they will leave. But no, my friend, the cracks are where love enters. The people who see you not as perfect, but as alive, are the ones who love you most deeply, for they recognize themselves in your incompleteness. They too are a little cracked, and together your fractures fit. When you drop the need to be whole, relationships transform. You stop using others as mirrors for your imagined perfection. You allow them to be messy, inconsistent, beautifully human. You stop demanding that they complete you, and in doing so, you finally meet them, not as halves seeking to become one, but as wholes dancing together in freedom. And something even deeper happens. The world softens. You no longer divide it into right and wrong, sacred and profane, success and failure. You begin to see that the opposites are necessary partners. The mountain cannot exist without the valley. Day would have no meaning without night. The perfection you crave only has meaning because of imperfection. You start to laugh, not mockingly, but tenderly, at your own old seriousness. You see how long you've chased an idea that never existed, and you realize the pursuit of wholeness is like chasing the horizon. You can run forever, but it will always remain the same distance away because it moves with you. You and the horizon are one phenomenon. You, the walker, it, the infinite line where sky meets sea. So you stop running. You sit down. You feel the grass beneath your hands, the wind on your face. And in that stillness, without achieving anything, you feel whole. That moment when you're no longer measuring, comparing, reaching, that's when you return to yourself. Not the self made of ideals, but the self made of life, breath, heartbeat, presence. You were never meant to be whole as an object. You were meant to be whole as an unfolding, a symphony that never resolves, because the beauty is in its becoming. And the moment you drop the demand for resolution, you hear the music that was playing all along. When you stop trying to be whole, you begin to live like water, moving, reflecting, never fixed. Water doesn't demand to be complete. It takes the shape of whatever holds it, the cup, the river, the cloud, and in each form, it is entirely itself. If it freezes, it becomes crystal. If it evaporates, it becomes mist. It doesn't say, "Ah, I have lost my wholeness because I am no longer a wave." It flows through change effortlessly because its nature is not the shape it takes, but the movement itself. And so it is with you. You are not the shapes you assume, not the roles, not the faces, not the stories. You are the movement beneath them. You are the current that carries them all. But you fear this, don't you? You fear dissolving. You fear the loss of identity, of certainty, of edges. Yet it is precisely that loss, that softening of boundaries, where real peace begins, because the need to be whole is really the need to be permanent, to be solid, to be safe. But permanence is a fantasy. It is the ego's last stand against the vastness of life. Everything in nature whispers the same truth. Nothing stands still. The seed cracks to become the tree. The wave collapses to return to the sea. The star burns out to give birth to light in another corner of the cosmos. What you call death is merely another phase of transformation, the same way a leaf falling to the forest floor becomes the soil that nourishes new roots. Wholeness, then, is not found in what endures, but in what changes. And you are the witness of that change, not its victim. You are not a fixed self wandering through time, collecting experiences like souvenirs. You are the space in which experiences appear and disappear, the vast awareness in which all things rise and fall like tides. When you stop trying to hold life together, you discover that it was never falling apart. The only thing that ever collapses is the illusion of control. And when that illusion drops away, what remains is an astonishing freedom, a freedom not from life, but in life. You begin to see that everything you once resisted was secretly helping you grow. The heartbreaks, the losses, the disappointments, they were the pruning of a tree preparing to bloom. You realize that you never truly learn from perfection, only from the cracks. The light enters where the world has made you porous. And in that realization, you stop fighting the seasons of your existence. You let the winters come. You let the leaves fall. You stop demanding endless summer because you understand. To demand eternal spring is to kill the garden. To demand wholeness is to deny the very movement that makes wholeness real. Now, imagine for a moment a painter at work. Each brushstroke on the canvas changes the entire composition. A single color added or removed alters the meaning of the whole. The painting is not whole until it is finished, but the artist knows when it's finished, it's dead. No more life moves through it. The process is the wholeness. The incompletion is what gives it breath. You are that painting. You are that brushstroke. You are the artist and the canvas and the movement between them. To drop the need to be whole is to remember that life's beauty lies not in being done, but in being in motion. Now, the mind will resist this. It will say, "But if I stop striving, won't I stagnate? Won't I fall apart?" But what if your striving is what has kept you from truly growing? The oak tree doesn't strain to reach the sky. It simply expands by being what it is. You do not see it clenching its roots or calculating its branches. It grows not by effort, but by alignment, by being open to sun, to rain, to wind, by participating with life, not fighting it. In the same way, when you drop the need to be whole, you make space for life to live you. The intelligence of existence moves through you naturally, gracefully, without the resistance of self-conscious striving. You become like the dancer who no longer counts the steps, who loses herself in the rhythm, and in doing so, becomes the dance. And the dance, that is wholeness. When you stop thinking of yourself as a problem to solve, you find yourself laughing more. You laugh because the seriousness dissolves. You laugh because you see that the cosmic joke has always been this. The very thing you were trying to fix was never broken. The you that tried to become whole was never real in the first place. Just a dream within a dream. The wave trying to become the ocean. The spark trying to become fire. The note trying to become music. And all along, they already were. So, when I say wholeness emerges when you drop the need to be whole, I mean this. The act of dropping, of releasing the grip, is the emergence. It's not something that happens after you let go. It happens in the letting go itself. Because surrender is not passive. It is participation without resistance. You might feel this in small, ordinary moments. When you stop arguing with life, when you stop saying, "This shouldn't be happening," suddenly everything is quieter. The chaos remains, but you're no longer tangled in it. You see that the waves still crash, the storms still come, but there's a deeper stillness underneath, like the calm depth of the sea that remains untouched, no matter how wild the surface becomes. That stillness is you, not the person you imagine yourself to be, but the awareness in which all imagining happens. That stillness was never broken, never incomplete. It doesn't need repair. It only needs recognition. And once you glimpse it, Even for a moment, you understand why all the striving feels so futile, because the one who strives is a mirage. You were whole before you began searching. You were complete before the mind invented the idea of incompleteness. You have always been the entire sky, the clouds, the rain, the sunlight, all of it playing together as one. The wholeness you seek is not ahead of you. It is behind your seeking. It is the ground upon which your steps are taken. And once you see this, you walk differently. You breathe differently. You live not to reach the horizon, but to feel the wind on your face as you walk. There comes a moment, quiet, unremarkable on the surface, when you realize that nothing needs to be added. You may be sitting at your desk, or walking home in the evening, or washing a cup at the sink. And then, suddenly, something loosens. You feel the world not as something you must master, but as something that breathes with you. You stop asking, "What's missing?" and instead whisper, "Ah, this." In that moment, you don't become whole. You simply remember that you never stopped being. Wholeness, you see, doesn't appear as a grand revelation. It unfolds like dawn, softly, almost shyly, through the cracks of your ordinary life. It arrives not through conquest, but through noticing, through an easing of the grip, through the stillness between the heartbeats where the world simply is. When you drop the need to be whole, you stop living as a project and begin living as a poem. A poem doesn't explain itself, nor does it apologize for its gaps. The beauty of a poem lies in what it leaves unsaid, the space that lets your own soul echo through the words. And so, too, your life gains its depth not from its perfections, but from its pauses, the places where you let silence speak. Most of us are terrified of silence. We fill it with plans, with noise, with endless inner commentary about who we are and what we lack. But silence is not absence, it's presence too vast for words. And within that presence, everything finds its rightful place. Your joy, your fear, your longing, all become notes in a larger harmony. There's an old Zen story of a monk who asked his master, "What is wholeness?" The master poured tea into the monk's cup until it overflowed. The monk cried out, "It's full! No more can fit." And the master smiled and said, "Then stop pouring. You see, your life overflows not because it is lacking, but because you keep pouring more into what is already enough. You fill your cup with expectations, with comparisons, with ideas of what you should be. But when you stop pouring, when you leave the cup as it is, suddenly it reflects the sky. That is what wholeness feels like, spaciousness. Not fullness in the sense of burden, but fullness as clarity, like a clear pond that reflects every cloud without clinging to any of them. When you are no longer trying to hold the reflection still, the water becomes calm on its own. And so, to drop the need to be whole is to trust that life knows how to balance itself. Just as your body knows how to heal a cut, life knows how to mend itself through you, if you stop interfering. The need to control is the very wound that prevents healing. The moment you release the idea of fixing, the deeper intelligence of being begins its quiet work. You might ask, but what do I do with this understanding? The mind wants a method, a plan, a roadmap. But the very question comes from the old habit, the habit of turning truth into a task. So the answer, paradoxically, is nothing. You notice, you listen, you allow. You stop treating your life as a self-improvement project and begin to treat it as art, spontaneous, imperfect, alive. You let your laughter crack, your tears fall, your voice tremble. You begin to live not from a place of should, but from a place of is. And from that still point, something extraordinary happens. Compassion begins to bloom. Not the sentimental kind, but the grounded compassion that comes from seeing clearly that you and everyone else are fragments of the same wholeness pretending to be separate. When you no longer demand to be perfect, you no longer demand perfection from others. Their flaws stop being threats and become mirrors, reminding you of your shared humanity. The need to be whole divides the world into those who have figured it out and those who haven't. But in truth, no one has. The saint and the sinner are both expressions of the same mystery. The tree doesn't judge its crooked branch. It grows around it. Life doesn't condemn its storms. It renews itself through them. When you see this, judgment falls away. You stop dividing experience into holy and unholy, pure and impure. You stop waiting for enlightenment to rescue you from yourself and begin to notice the light already shining through every moment, through laughter, through heartbreak, through the taste of tea, through the breath rising and falling in your chest. Wholeness is not an attainment, it's a recognition. And that recognition is not something you grasp, but something that grasps you. It comes like a tide washing over the sandcastle of your identity, not destroying you, but showing you what was always beneath. And perhaps that is what the great poets and mystics meant when they spoke of surrender, not a giving up, but a giving in, a melting into the vastness of what already is. To drop the need to be whole is to fall back into the arms of the universe and realize those arms were your own. So, stop fixing and start feeling. Stop measuring and start noticing. Stop demanding and start dancing. For the dance is already perfect, not because the steps are flawless, but because there are no wrong steps. Every misstep becomes part of the choreography once you stop insisting it shouldn't have happened. The universe is endlessly creative, endlessly forgiving. It always finds rhythm again. And so, the moment you stumble, you are still in the dance. The moment you falter, the music shifts to meet you. The moment you lose balance, life catches you, not as punishment, but as play. You see, wholeness is not a static state, but a living, breathing improvisation. It is not the silence of completion, but the harmony of continuous creation. You cannot capture it, because the moment you try, it changes shape, like trying to hold a flame in your hands. It is meant to be felt, not possessed. So breathe. Right here, in this breath, you are whole, not because you have arrived anywhere, but because you never left. And if you listen carefully, beneath all the noise of thought, you can hear it, a quiet hum, a background stillness. the pulse of existence itself. It has always been there, from the moment you were born, even before the mind began to speak its endless commentary. It's not something you achieve through discipline. It's what remains when effort drops away. That hum is the music of wholeness, not a sound you create, but one you return to hearing. And the strange thing is, the more you try to listen for it, the less you hear. Only when you stop listening as an effort, when you simply are, does the song reveal itself. This is why all the great dances of life begin in surrender. Not because surrender is defeat, but because it's trust. The moment you stop holding yourself together, you realize you were never the one holding anything at all. Life holds you. Breath holds you. Awareness holds you. The very cosmos moves through you like wind through reeds. And suddenly, you no longer need to be whole because you feel yourself as the totality of movement, part of the grand choreography of existence. You don't need to justify your place in it. You simply are it. Have you noticed how a bird doesn't check its reflection before it flies? It doesn't ask, "Am I ready?" The wind calls, and it rises. There's no thought of wholeness, only flight. And yet, in that effortless response, it is perfectly whole. You, too, are being called by the wind. But you've been trained to question the invitation. You wait until you feel ready, until you think you patched all your holes, silenced all your fears, arranged all your thoughts neatly in a row. But life doesn't wait for your perfection. It begins when you leap, trembling wings and all, because wholeness is not readiness. It's response. It's the willingness to meet life as it is, with nothing left out. The fear, the wonder, the grief, the joy, all of it belongs to the same movement. You've been told that to be whole, you must be consistent. But the opposite is true. Wholeness is not a single color. It's the entire spectrum. It's the storm and the calm, the laughter and the tears, the collapse and the rising. To be whole is to stop editing yourself into fragments. The rain doesn't choose where to fall. The river doesn't pick its stones. And yet the whole landscape is shaped by their flowing. That is you, the flow shaping itself through experience. Now, you may wonder, if wholeness is already what I am, why does it feel like something's missing? Because you've mistaken the clouds for the sky. Thoughts and emotions, fears, they drift across your awareness, and you identify with each one in turn. You say, I am this cloud, forgetting the vastness behind it. But the sky does not chase the clouds. It lets them pass. And in that letting go, the sun reveals itself again and again. Every moment you stop identifying, you return to wholeness. Every time you release the urge to fix, you fall back into being. And the most beautiful thing happens when you see this clearly. Even your fragmentation becomes holy. You stop saying, this part of me shouldn't exist. Instead, you bow to it. You see that the very things you wanted to erase, the confusion, the uncertainty, the sorrow, are what make you tender, what connect you to everything else that feels. You see, even the waves that crash most violently are still made of the same ocean. The storm doesn't destroy the sea. It only reveals its depth. And when you stop resisting the storm within you, it softens. You realize that pain, too, wants to move, to complete its cycle, to express itself and dissolve. Suffering is prolonged only when you try to hold it back, when you tighten your grip around it, insisting it means something about who you are. But when you let it move, when you let it dance its rough, wild dance, it flows through you, and in its wake, it leaves clarity. You don't heal by becoming someone else. You heal by dropping the illusion that you ever needed to. Think of the forest. Not every tree is straight. Some twist toward the sun. Some split and regrow around rocks. Some hollow out and become homes for birds. And yet, is the forest broken? Or is its crookedness what makes it alive? You are that forest. Every shadowed path, every hidden root, every sudden burst of green belongs. When you drop the need to be whole, life becomes astonishingly intimate. The distance between you and the world dissolves. You start to feel everything, not as a threat, but as texture. You notice the light on the water, the breath of wind through leaves, the laughter of a stranger passing by. Nothing is separate anymore. Even the smallest sound becomes sacred because you are no longer standing apart, trying to organize the universe into categories of complete and incomplete. You begin to live, finally, as part of the song. And what a relief it is to stop performing and start participating. To realize that the play of opposites, gain and loss, rise and fall, was never a test, but a rhythm. The wholeness you sought in stillness was always hidden in motion. When you let go of the search, you don't dissolve into emptiness, you dissolve into fullness, into the immense, ungraspable wholeness of being alive. You are no longer a spectator of the cosmos, but its voice, its pulse, its breath. And that's the quiet miracle. When you stop needing to be whole, you become life itself expressing wholeness through you. At first, it may frighten you, this sense of boundlessness. You've spent so long defining yourself by edges, by names, by roles. You've drawn outlines around your being as if to say, this is me, and that is not. But once the outline softens, once you realize the boundary was only a sketch in the mind, you begin to sense something vast, quiet, and free. It feels like standing at the edge of the ocean at night. You can't see where the water ends or where the sky begins, yet somehow you belong entirely to both. That belonging is wholeness. And it was never lost. It was only hidden beneath the illusion of being separate. When you drop the need to be whole, you begin to experience life as an intimate unfolding rather than a distant pursuit. You stop trying to hold the world in your hands and instead let it move through you. You become porous, permeable to wonder, vulnerable to beauty, open to the touch of everything. In that openness, the very idea of wholeness becomes unnecessary, because now you're not looking at life, you're in it. You are the sound of rain, the warmth of sunlight, the ache of longing, the breath between thoughts. Everything that passes through you, you realize, is you. You no longer have to unify experience because experience was never divided. And then something gentle happens. Gratitude arises. Not gratitude for something, but gratitude as something. A quiet thankfulness that doesn't need an object. You feel grateful simply because there is life, because breath moves in and out, because existence, in all its strangeness, continues to dance. This gratitude is not the product of effort, it's the fragrance of surrender. When the mind stops fighting the world, the heart naturally opens. You feel the pulse of being not as something you earned, but as a gift that was never withheld. You see, the need to be whole comes from the illusion that you were ever apart. The moment that illusion dissolves, everything becomes whole by default. You don't create wholeness, you recognize it. You remember that the mountain is not more complete than the cloud, that the silence between words is as essential as the words themselves. What, after all, is a song without silence? What is the sky without its storms? What is love without its ache? The universe plays through contrast. Without absence, there is no presence. Without loss, no tenderness. Wholeness is the unity of these opposites, the meeting point where darkness and light bow to one another. So when you feel lost, do not rush to be found. When you feel broken, do not scramble to mend. Instead, pause. Listen. Watch how even your confusion arises and fades within awareness. Notice how even your suffering unfolds in rhythm, an inhale and an exhale, the pulse of the same life that animates the stars. And then, right there, in the heart of the confusion, you glimpse it. Wholeness, not as perfection, but as participation, not as serenity, but as the stillness that holds even the storm. You realize that every experience, even pain, is life trying to know itself through you. Every joy is the universe recognizing its own reflection. Every heartbreak is the ocean returning to itself through the wave of your heart. The irony is that you don't have to fix a single thing to see this. You only have to stop trying to see. When the eye relaxes, the view clears on its own. There's a story of a man who searched for years for a precious pearl. He traveled across oceans, through deserts, through cities and jungles. Finally, exhausted and near death, he lay down on the shore, and as he did, he noticed something shimmering in his own hand. The pearl had been there all along, but his searching hand was clenched too tightly to see it. Only when he loosened his grip did the light appear. You, too, have always held the pearl of wholeness. It was never lost, only obscured by the tightness of your search. When you open your hand, when you open your heart, when you stop needing, the light reveals itself effortlessly. And perhaps that is the final paradox. Wholeness does not come to those who seek it. It comes to those who stop running from what already is. For wholeness is not the opposite of brokenness. It is the dance that includes it. When you understand this, even your shadow becomes sacred. You no longer exile the parts of yourself that hurt, that doubt, that long. You invite them in for tea. You ask them what they've been trying to show you. And in that conversation, you find that your darkness was never against you. It was always the other face of your light. To drop the need to be whole is to fall back into this eternal conversation where every silence is understood and every imperfection is part of the grammar of being. It is to walk the world barefoot, feeling both the thorns and the soft earth, knowing both belong to the same path. And when you walk this way, with nothing to prove, nothing to achieve, every step becomes sacred. You don't move toward wholeness, you move as wholeness. The road beneath you, the air you breathe, the heartbeat in your chest, all of it speaks the same truth. You were never incomplete. You were only pretending not to notice. So, rest now. Let go of the anxious fixing. Let the dance unfold through you. Let life play its melody on the strings of your being, uncorrected, unrehearsed. For when you stop trying to be whole, you become the music itself. And now, let us arrive, though not at an ending, but at a widening, because wholeness, like truth, has no edge. It doesn't stop where words do. It only deepens into silence. You see, when you no longer demand to be whole, life begins to reveal its secret symmetry. You start to see it everywhere, in the crumbling of a wall, in the laughter that follows tears, in the breath that both fills and empties you. The opposites you once feared, gain and loss, joy and sorrow, are no longer enemies. They are two movements of one eternal pulse, rising and falling like the tides. And when you no longer resist that pulse, you discover peace, not the peace of escape, but the peace of presence, the kind of peace that does not depend on the weather of your life, the kind that remains even as the storm howls, because you've realized you're not the boat, but the ocean. You stop asking, when will I be whole? Because you no longer mistake wholeness for completion. You understand now that life is not a riddle to be solved, but a melody to be played. And melodies are beautiful precisely because they never stay still. The universe does not aim to perfect itself. It is perfect because it is alive. It expands, it collapses, it dances, it dissolves endlessly. And you are part of that movement. The breath that flows through you now is the same breath that moves the galaxies. The heartbeat in your chest echoes the rhythm of distant stars. You were never an observer of life, standing apart, trying to repair it. You were always the very fabric of life itself, a thread in the infinite weave. When you stop trying to patch the tapestry, you begin to see its beauty. The loose ends, the knots, the irregular stitches, they are not flaws, they are texture. Without them, there would be no pattern. This understanding doesn't make life easier, but it makes it real. You will still hurt. You will still stumble. But even in those moments, something deeper knows nothing is wrong. You don't need to be anywhere else. You don't need to become anyone else. The dance is already happening, and you are it. Imagine for a moment that life is a vast symphony. Every note, every rest, every dissonance, every silence, all necessary for the whole. You are not the conductor nor the audience. You are one of the notes, vibrating exactly as you must. The harmony doesn't depend on you being perfect. It depends on you sounding as you are. That is all life ever asked of you. Not perfection, not enlightenment, just honesty. The courage to be what you are, in this moment, without disguise. And that That is wholeness. It cannot be owned, cannot be achieved, cannot be taught. It can only be lived. It is the openness that comes when the striving ends. It is the laughter that follows surrender. It is the sigh that leaves your lips when you finally stop trying to hold the sky in your hands. The wholeness you drop everything to find was the one holding you from the beginning. So, perhaps the great discovery of life is not that we must seek completion, but that we are already woven into it. Perhaps the point is not to become whole, but to see that every fragment, every wound, every fleeting joy, each is a doorway into the same vastness. And when you understand that, you move differently. You walk not as a seeker, but as a participant in the eternal unfolding. You love not to fill a void, but because love is what the void itself has always been. You breathe not to survive, but to join the rhythm of the universe as it breathes itself awake through you. You stop clinging to moments because you see that nothing is ever truly lost. Even what dies continues, transformed, reimagined, reborn in the fabric of everything else. The leaf becomes soil, the soil becomes tree, the tree becomes breath. Wholeness is not about holding on, it's about allowing. It's about trusting that every ending is secretly a continuation wearing a new face. And so, my friend, the next time you feel broken, remember, the crack is not a failure, it is an opening. The next time you feel incomplete, look not for what's missing, but for what's already here, shimmering quietly behind your need. And the next time you find yourself reaching for wholeness, stop, breathe. Let yourself fall back into the embrace of what's already whole, because you are not a problem to be solved, nor a statue to be finished. You are a wave in motion, rising, breaking, and returning to the sea. And the sea does not demand its waves to be whole. It only asks them to dance. So dance. Dance without a goal, without a map, without an answer. Dance as the trees sway, as the stars burn, as the rivers sing. For in that movement, raw, unplanned, and utterly alive, wholeness reveals itself, not as a prize, but as your very nature. You are not trying to become life. You are life, dreaming of becoming whole. And the dream ends the moment you wake, right here, right now, to the truth that you already are. There is no after, no someday. There is only this. This breath, this heartbeat, this unrepeatable moment of being. Wholeness was never waiting for you at the end of the path. It was the path itself, the walking, the falling, the getting up again. It was the laughter echoing through your mistakes, the silence between your words, the love that never stopped holding you, even as you forgot it was there. So rest, dear listener. Lay down the burden of becoming. The search is over. And in the gentle stillness that follows, feel it, not as an idea, but as a presence, that spacious, timeless, wordless awareness in which all things rise and fall. That is wholeness, and it has always been you.